the moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerf Herder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Mike Mjolnir Evans. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
All right, whatever. Let's go.
All right, let's go. We're in.
Like hey, welcome back, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. La, la, la.
We all have our Pokemon sitting on our shoulders for this episode.
Come on, you can't walk? Get off my shoulder.
Yeah, I took a visit to Rhyme City and came back with a little something.
Oh no, dysentery.
I've already got a doctor's appointment for Monday.
Little Pokemon STD.
Yeah, but we'll get into it. Trust us, we'll get into it. If you haven't been able to tell yet, our main feature this week is Detective Pikachu.
A Pokemon movie? Was it? Pokemon's in there somewhere. Pokemon? A Detective Pikachu. This is the first real live action. Do you think it will be the last?
Well, I don't know. I think it's too early to tell. This might be a slow burn. I think it did okay at the
It bumped Endgame to the top spot this week.
You know, it's not doing Endgame type numbers.
But, no. But I will tell you, my theater was filled, and we'll go from there.
All right. So, but, you know, as always, we have some news for you.
We do have some news, and I feel like every week we just talk Disney or Star Wars.
Well, that's what people want to know about.
Is there any other kind of news?
I don't know. I feel like I should just move on, but we will just talk about Disney announced their upcoming schedule, and we have 3 unnamed Star Wars movies in the pipeline. We will not see one until 2022.
Yes, they have learned their lesson with Solo, I think, which is a great movie.
It is a phenomenal movie. To me, it's everything that you wanted in a Star Wars standalone movie.
Yeah, but it just came too close. It came too close on the heels of Last Jedi.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, it felt the wrath. So right now, we're going to get Rise of Skywalker in December of 2019 of this year. And then we will not get another one until December of 2022. And then you have 2024 and then 2026. So every 2 years, as opposed to one Star Wars a year, we're now every other year. But we don't know what they are. We don't know if these are the Game of Thrones creators, if it's any of that stuff that's been in development, or Rian Johnson, if it's his trilogy they've been talking about, or if it's something completely different.
Why would they wait every 2 years, though? I mean, it's just
well. Don't forget, we're still going to get that Cassian and Andor series. You got the Mandalorian. You do have Rebels. Is it Rebels? Clone Wars is coming back, and no, I think it's Resistance. That's a new animated show. So there's plenty of Star Wars stuff out there, but the movies we won't be getting until every 2 years. Listen, 2 years. We had to wait 3 in between.
True.
But we are spoiled in the age of Marvel. When Marvel movies come out, it seems like every 6 months on the clock. With that in mind, 2 years is a lifetime to wait for another feature film.
So there's that. Since we're on the Star Wars news, we're going to bring this up, which is, did you gentlemen get your tax return checks back?
You know, I did, and it was much, much smaller than it normally was.
Not what you were hoping for, Mike?
No, it was not the same under the Obama administration.
No, gotcha. I gotcha. But supposedly, well, we can go down. Never mind. We're not even going to go down that road. Well, there's an auction coming up on May 14th, so you might want to save that money, because apparently there is a Vader costume up for grabs.
I was wondering where you were going with this tax check thing, Joe.
Do you want to pool all of our money? They're predicting anywhere from 1 to 2 million. But here's the thing, which is, depending on what news source you read, and the one that you had sent me, Jim, indicated that this was a screen-used costume from The Empire Strikes Back, designed by John Mullo himself, who is one of the original designers. From what I understand, they can't corroborate that this was screen-used. It comes from a gentleman who was hired exclusively to dress up as Darth Vader for film promotions and comic conventions. So these were more like promotional on-site Darth Vader in costume here for photo ops. I'm sure it's still going to go for a huge chunk of change, but I think not being able to confirm that it was screen used, I don't think it's going to go for $2 million.
So this is an officially made costume, even though it was just made for promotion.
Yeah.
So you would assume that it has all the detail that an official.
Correct. I think it's everything I did read is that there's 17 unique individual parts to this costume. And from what I understand from this gentleman, and I do not have his name available, it is very hot to get into this costume and to stand around at kids' birthday parties.
I would think.
But he was hired because he was tall and he had a deep voice. So I guess he was doing the voice while he was walking around. In the past, a screen used R2-D2 has gone for $2.76 million, which is to be money well spent. And I think one of Luke's lightsabers actually went for $450,000. So who knows? Stuff's out there. You got the money. Maybe.
I think we're going to have to go in with a low bid, guys.
Yeah.
And just hope that no one's paying attention.
Right.
We're listening to this. Well, by the time the podcast comes out, the auction will be over.
Will this be a buy it now on eBay?
Yeah, right. Imagine the shipping on this thing. I don't think so. The only other news I have, which is not Star Wars related, is Michael Rooker supposedly is in talks to play King Shark in James Gunn's Suicide Squad 2. Now, based on my knowledge of this character, he's going to be mostly CG. I mean, as Yondu, at least he was the actor just in blue skin. If he's King Shark, he's got to be CG.
Well, this is good news for Suicide Squad 2.
Rooker has refuted this, but we know how these rumors things go, and even if it isn't true, it may spark a conversation, and you never know. But I still thought that was kind of cool because he's kind of made a niche for himself as these kind of off the wall characters.
Next is Zoe Saldana as Harley Quinn.
That's it. Yeah.
Chris Pratt as Joker.
Guardians of the Suicide.
Yeah.
And that's my news.
So let's get into Detective Pikachu. Pika Pika. All right, now, Jeff, we really should, as you said, talk about our movie-going experience with this. So, Jeff, you said that your theater was sold out. When did you go?
It was not really sold out, but it was jam-packed. I had to go Friday night at 9:45, which is, if anybody knows, is way past my bedtime to go sit in a movie theater. Now, both of my kids went the night before to the 10 o'clock showing.
To the Thursday night 10 o'clock
Thursday night 10 o'clock.
Now, that's commitment.
They had to buy their tickets online, and they said that was sold out, and it was jam-packed. So I get there. I get my seat. I'm in my spot, and it's a kids' movie, right?
Yeah.
It is filled with teenagers. Loud, obnoxious, over the top, taking multiple selfies in front of each other, screaming at the screen. And to be honest with you, if this was a Star Wars or a Marvel movie, I would have put on my angry dad hat.
Now, Jeff, wait, pause there. Now, you have to realize you are in ground zero for teenager territory on opening night at 10 p.m. So you've got to go in there expecting this kind of audience.
I don't know what I was expecting, to be honest with you. I did see, I had a friend on Facebook who was crying about the fact that he had kids in his theater, and every time another Pokemon showed up, they were screaming out its name. And I'm thinking to myself, well, then don't go to a matinee where there's a bunch of little kids. I just embraced it. I said, this is how I'm going to watch this movie. I'm just going to feed off this energy. And it was such a fun experience. But I did realize as soon as the lights went down and the movie started, that I had a very little kid behind me who proceeded to tell his mom for 45 minutes straight everything that was going on screen. And he was like something had happened. That's why you don't trust a Pokemon. And then he would just talk about him catching that Pokemon. And his mom, I don't know if it was his mom or his aunt or somebody, but she was very aloof and didn't care one way or the other. And she, okay, all right. Okay. I'm like, tell that kid to shut up.
You see, now I needed that kid because I had no idea what was going on from the get-go.
Well, wait, you have no Pokemon reference whatsoever.
I have no Pokemon experience. I mean, my son collects the cards half-heartedly. You know,
Okay,
he's never
all right.
played. He's never traded. He's never battled. He's never gone to one of these,
I
game
didn't
plays.
realize that you were this much of a noob.
Yeah.
I
So,
mean,
and I was
obviously,
hoping, usually movies like this, they pander not only to the hardcore fan, but you have to have a balance of, because you know that there's going to be people looking at your movie who've never really experienced this before, but they don't really address those people in the audience. They kind of assume that you know what's going on.
Oh, see, I thought the
the
opening did a great job of kind of establishing the world of who and what it was and what you can and can't do.
Yeah, you think so? Because
I
was
so.
checking.
Again, I have knowledge.
Yeah,
so
because about 10 minutes into this, I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna have to check. I'm gonna have to check my pulse periodically because I think I'm slipping into a coma. And
Mike is like a sigh of relief right now. He's like, I have dodged disaster.
Yes, absolutely.
If anybody doesn't realize, last week Mike decided that there is no way, shape, or form that we could ever get him in the theater to see this.
Not a chance.
And now Jim has just corroborated that.
Yes.
Now,
I will say this. My movie-going experience was early on a Saturday morning. So it was about 10:45 a.m., my showing.
Okay.
Filled with kids.
There you go.
And
Yeah.
they were silent throughout the whole thing. It was not even like a play-by-play going on. But I will tell you that the energy in the movie just kind of erupted at the end, because at the very end credits, you're getting just a flashback of the Pokemon that have been in the movie, and you see like animated stills of each of the characters, and each one of them got their own applause from the kids.
Well, I have to say I held my own because I came home and I've talked about this movie with my kids for 2 days straight now. And I'm like, oh, and then when we saw Ludicolo, and my son is like, yeah, that's right. That like he's amazed that I actually have been able to absorb some of these names. Although I think I might have just mispronounced that one. So Angry Birds 2 is coming out. I've never seen Angry Birds, nor will I ever see it. But there's, in honor of Mother's Day, they've got these little hatchlings, and they're adorable. They're like these little puffballs. And they decided they're going to sing a Mother's Day song. And I will tell you, it was cute. But the kids in the audience were just eating it up. And they were loving it. And they clapped at the end of that little ad for Happy Mother's Day. And some kids yelled, I love you, Mom. So you didn't see the Sonic trailer either, because that got some loud cheers and a lot of jeers. It was pretty mixed, which we talked about last week.
You just name checked that old TV guide section, remember? Cheers and jeers.
Cheers and cheers. I didn't realize this was based on a video game. That I didn't know.
Sonic the Hedgehog? You didn't know that?
No. This Pokemon, Detective Pokemon,
okay.
Detective Pikachu. That's the actual name of a video game.
Yes, I didn't know that either. Doing some research into this, because I really needed to see the.
So can you at least take us
plot
through?
was? It's going to be.
Go ahead.
difficult.
I want to see how much you absorbed.
Okay, so apparently the early stages of this movie sets up that humans and Pokemon coexist in reality, and apparently every human has their own Pokemon that walks with them through life. I don't know really what else they do.
Like a life partner, right? Yeah, it is kind of a weird.
And we're introduced to this character of Tim Goodman in the beginning of the movie, early 20s.
He's a good man because that's his name.
He's a good man, yeah. And he doesn't have a Pokemon. And I don't know if he had a prejudice against Pokemon or whatever, but he's a late bloomer when it comes to Pokemon.
He didn't want one.
And one of his friends has convinced him that he needs to get one. So in the very early stages, I don't know the name of the Pokemon he was trying to get, but it's the one that wears the skull hat.
A little skull for a head.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to draw a blank on his name too.
And he's a little ornery, and he does not want to be taken by Tim. He resists being taken, so Tim reluctantly has to give him up, and it's an unsuccessful grab at a Pokemon. So we go from that. That's the only setup you get of what's happening in this reality, is that humans have Pokemons. And kind of a half-hearted narration after that by the great actor Bill Nye, who plays Howard Clifford, like a Richard Branson type character, like the head of a conglomerate. And he has started decades before this movie takes place, Rhyme City, where Pokemon and humans can cohabit together. And it's a city that's cohabitated by both. And I guess any city would be cohabitated by both if every human has a Pokemon anyway. So I didn't really get that.
But it's in the outside of Rhyme City. You saw that with Tim, where he was trying to catch the Pokemon with these Pokeballs, and you become a Pokemaster. You collect these. To me, it's indentured servitude. You're catching these and then forcing them to fight each other. It's a cockfight. That's really what it comes down to. You roam the countryside, you collect these things out, roaming around in the wild. You keep them in this little ball, and then you bring them out to fight other Pokemon.
All this was kind of a way to try to retrofit what kids do with the cards in reality into the story of a movie. And it doesn't really ring true. No, but that's
if you go back to the very first video game and the comic books and all the animated shows and everything that came from that, that's the basis, is that you're just collecting these things to fight each other.
So
Rhyme City being something different, where they live side by side, because you saw like the Squirtles, using their water powers to help put out a fire with the firemen. You saw all these other, one of them's directing traffic. So they live in harmony. They're not slaves, really, is what it comes down to. And yet, but even in Rhyme City, everyone has a Pokemon.
You make this sound so noble, Jeff.
I'm just trying to put it into context. No, I don't think it's noble. Like I said, the whole idea of gotta catch them all. It's like, just leave me alone. Let me just wander and eat and do what I got to do. Don't force me to fight some other guy.
So the second or third big question mark that appeared over my head during this movie was the voiceover from Howard Clifford. There's like a 2 or 3 minute scene where they use a television interview with this character. And he's talking about how he set up Rhyme City because he had a debilitating disease. And while he was trying to find a cure for himself, he established Rhyme City. Now, how those two things correlate?
No, it's never really established.
How do you go about, founding a city in the midst of trying to find a cure for your
right? Yeah.
So, and he's wheelchair bound, which is one tenuous link between this movie and Big Lebowski, our classic feature this week. So I found one. Found a couple actually, because they're both kind of noirish type movies. But
yeah.
We'll get into that when we talk about Lebowski. So Howard Clifford, he sets up Rhyme City so Pokemon and humans can live in harmony. And there's a little bit of history. It says Pokemon have existed hand in hand with humanity since the very beginning of time. And you see cave walls of pictures of humans and Pokemon.
Right.
And then it goes on to say humans have traded Pokemon throughout history, and they've also put them in battles against each other, as if like just to really try to bring that connection between the cards and what's happening in this story. And so from there on, you come back with Tim Goodman, who has traveled to Rhyme City because he's gotten news that his father, Harry, has died in a car crash, and his father is a police officer. So Tim's gone to Rhyme City, and they haven't really spoken with each other since Tim has become a teenager and then a young adult. I'm not really sure what he's planning on doing, if he's going to stay in the city or not, but that's the reason he's there, is because of his father's death.
And that's where we meet Ken Watanabe, who is the detective that knew his father or whatever. But yeah, the kid was like, screw it, just give me the keys. I really don't care.
So he goes to his father's apartment. Once he lets himself in, that's when our friend Pikachu comes into the picture. Pika Pika! Pikachu, it turns out, is his father's Pokemon. Tim, for one reason or other, can understand, as everybody has seen in the trailer, can understand what Pikachu is saying. And Pikachu, of course, voiced by Ryan Reynolds. Making no effort to put on a cutesy voice or anything. So he's just pretty much Deadpool speaking to...
Without the naughty talk.
Without the naughty talk.
No potty mouth.
Although he does have some mild curse words in there, which would still surprise me, as this was a kid's movie. But also, Tim finds a little vial of purple stuff that's marked with an R on the vial. And of course, what does he do? You see something...
opens it.
It. Look, it could be nitroglycerin. It's a very threatening type vial.
There's a lot of actions in this movie that don't really make sense.
So he opens it, and some Pokemon that look like monkeys that are hanging outside the window.
Yeah, ape-poms.
Ape bombs?
Ape-pom.
Ape-poms.
Yes.
So they
this is gonna be fun.
So they smell this purple stuff.
I should have brought in my son.
You should have, yeah.
He would have schooled you. He's still sleeping. He's not.
So this purple stuff makes Pokemon lose their itch, turn primal and feral. except for Pikachu. He doesn't seem to be affected.
No, he's not affected, right? They reminded me of, you remember in the Smurf episode where they got the purple
Smurfs.
one? And they would bite their tails and gnap. That's it. They just turned mad and angry, but only for a certain amount of time, and then they would turn back normal. My guess is that they spent all their money on making these Pokemon, which I thought it was very well. There was a couple times where I'm like, these things have to be practical because they just have such texture and such weight and presence in the scenes. Like the scene like you were talking about where he's on his way into Rhyme City, and you get that little exposition in the video screen about, you know, who and what Rhyme City is, and he encounters a licky tongue, the one with the giant tongue that licks him.
Yes.
Like that tongue was practical. They actually, you know, it was a big plasticky rubbery thing that they had sliding down the side of his face. But other than that, these are all straight up CG characters.
There were quite a few very nice character effects going on here. My favorite probably was the giant tortoises, the Torteras.
Oh, the Torteras, yeah. That was a great scene. That was a phenomenal scene.
Yeah. Mountain.
You really didn't know what was going on.
So there's and I like the Ditto, which is revealed at the end to be a shapeshifter who's been kind of manipulating events throughout the movie.
Yeah, see, and I didn't see that coming. I actually thought she was another character. There's a bad guy. I think it's brother sister team. They're called Team Rocket, Jesse and James, and I thought that's who she was. Now, see, that means absolutely nothing to you, but it didn't turn out to be who I thought it was.
And then, of course, you've got the Mewtwo. It's established early on that this is the villain, but it's not really. It's
how much did this remind you of Ultraman that we just talked about last week, where you thought that Bebular was the bad guy, and then and you get these constant flashbacks to Mewtwo, and then you realize as the movie goes along that, oh, he's not really the bad guy all along.
Towards the third act of the movie, that's where my heartbeat started to give out, and I was going into flatline territory. And because it was just too much for me to try to sort out and keep up with, and I probably left this plane for about 10 minutes and then woke up with a start during the final fight. So I missed a little bit of what was going on between Bill Nye's character and Mewtwo. So apparently his consciousness was in Mewtwo.
Yes, correct.
And he was using the body of Mewtwo to do his dirty work.
Yeah. And Mewtwo, I thought visually, I thought he was the weakest link. Because all these other characters, especially Pikachu, there wasn't a single scene where he was on screen where someone in my audience didn't go, "Oh, he's so cute, I just want to hug him." like that's the level. He was adorable. He was cute.
So I did lose the plot a little bit. Literally.
But that's basically it. Yeah, you get the impression, you know, so they go on this hunt because they realize that Harry's not really dead. Either someone faked his death or he faked his own death, and they want to find out why. And then you find out that he had stumbled across some secret. The bad guy all along was this Bill Nye's character. And there's this big parade, and he had all the purple gas, and he was going to infect all of the Pokemon with this.
So what he wanted to do was to fuse humans and Pokemon, right? Was that his goal?
Yeah. You were right, because that's for what purpose, I have no idea. It didn't really... The plot-wise didn't really hold together too much. And all I could think of when I saw the balloons was every other movie that had giant balloons in it.
Spider-Man, right?
Well, the Spider-Man Green Goblin fight, but also wasn't it Batman Returns? Wasn't this the Joker's same exact plot, which was some kind of a gas that was in the balloons that were floating in the parade?
Yeah,
right?
all that we needed here was a Prince song, and then you would have
There you go.
Batman, right?
But you're right, because all these other Pokemon are being affected, but Pikachu escapes numerous times being around this stuff, and
it's never really explained, right? Why he's...
No, but I mean, at the end, we find out that Mewtwo actually saved Harry by transferring his consciousness into Pikachu, and that's why Pikachu can talk to Tim. But my bigger question is, wouldn't you recognize your dad's voice? Because at the very end... And you never see his dad in any of the flashbacks or anything. You never see his face.
And this is the one spoiler. This is the one spoiler that we're going to give out there, right? Because it's not really a spoiler type movie.
This scene and the scene where Pikachu starts singing the theme song got the biggest response in my theater. And that's, you find out that his dad is really Ryan Reynolds. Just playing Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
So when he all of a sudden shows up, and it was kind of like, what? Wait a minute. What the?
Yeah.
So now at the end of the movie, Pikachu is now separate. He's back to Pika Pika. He doesn't talk. And Tim rekindles his relationship with his father. But going forward, you can't have a sequel without a smart Pikachu.
Correct. Yeah. So you found out everything that Pikachu had set up in the earlier stages of the movie, like that he loves coffee, all these idiosyncrasies that he's revealed to Tim, really are his father's idiosyncrasies and has nothing to do with Pikachu, the character. So if we were to go into a sequel, it would be a completely different point of view. If you're looking at
maybe we could be like, I don't know, Bulbasaur, PI or Secret Agent Squirtle. I mean, we could have a whole series of these.
Now, what got me really excited in the beginning was the Toho logo that popped up. So
I know, right? Because I was surprised.
So, and I read into this, Warner Brothers has taken over distribution in most of the world, except for China and Japan, where it's taken by Toho. So I thought that was an interesting little tidbit.
Yeah.
But it all went downhill for me.
I liked it. I bought into a hook, line, and sinker. I had a great time with it.
Now, did you stay? Was there a post-credits
I didn't
sequence?
sit through the end credits. No, because it was, like I said, it was 10 o'clock. So it was way late by the time I got out of this. I did not sit through, and I don't know if there's an end credit. But if you have, I've already had like 2 or 3 coworkers who are younger than me who were like, how was it? How was it? And I said, if you even have a remote interest in Pokemon, you're going to love it. And they were
Which I would agree with. I'm
surprised it took this long, to be honest with you, to make a live action Pokemon. And I guess the studio had a lot of back and forth with the Pokemon. Was it Nintendo? I think Nintendo has the sole ownership of trademark, but it's also the Pokemon company. And like, there's questions that they would come back to because you've never seen these characters. They're all little cartoon or they're, little 8-bit graphics. So all of a sudden they're designing a Jigglypuff and they put fur on him and they're like, oh no, he's got like pig skin. Or, the fact that there's one character who has like, what looks like a belt with like a Speedos. And they're like, no, they don't wear clothes. So what the hell is that? And they're like, we don't know. So it's like, so there's the Mr. Mime, that guy who was actually, it was one of the funnier moments. And I guess the design studio was just like, what do we do with this thing? He borders on like Pennywise, creepy clown. And
unfortunately, that was already given away in a lot of the previews. And that's probably the funniest sequence in the movie.
That was the funnier sequence. But like you said, you brought up before, the Torterras, where they're on the run and they're out in the wilderness, and all of a sudden the whole mountains are shifting and the trees are going, and it was a pretty well put together sequence because you didn't know what the hell was going on, and then you realize that they're just giant creatures, Pokemon,
like turtles. And they gave you a little bit of a hint as to what these things look like because they were smaller versions that they passed when they were going through a laboratory trying to find out the origin of the Mewtwo. And then in the wilds, these Torterras are like mountain ranges. They're so big. It was a very nice effect. And I did note there was that annoying kid that you always see in the Pokemon cartoons is absent here. His name is Ash Ketchum, I think is what it is.
Ash? You don't like Ash?
Don't like Ash. Now, have you heard about this hoax that's on YouTube with Pokemon?
And supposedly Ryan Reynolds released that video.
Yeah, he did. On Twitter, I believe. He forwarded this on after he saw it on YouTube himself.
Oh, okay.
Apparently somebody uploaded an hour and 45-minute video saying that it was a bootleg copy, an advanced copy of the full movie.
Yep.
And like the first 2 minutes has a scene with Tim Goodman taken right from the movie. And then all of a sudden it goes into an hour and a half of Pikachu doing aerobics. And that's it.
So, this conversation's coming to an end really quick. So
I still don't know what the movie's about.
I'm going to say it's not for us.
Now, Jeff, did you get packs of Pokemon cards going into it?
I did. And my son immediately scarfed them up.
Yeah.
And then said, oh, you got nothing good.
And because every single pack that I got had Pikachu in it.
There's only 2 cards in it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, don't give me a pack of cards. It's not a pack.
So we believe that a sequel is pending, right? I think I read somewhere they were already in pre-production on it.
Well, this goes into, the mentality that you spend all this time creating these characters. So you've done all that world building. And they did a really good job of world building, I thought. Visually, it looked very impressive. And like I said, you never once questioned, outside of Mewtwo, who I thought looked a little cheesy and very CG, all these other characters, again, had a lot of weight and a lot of presence. So, yeah, I mean, it's like Avatar. You know, he spent all this time building this world out. Why waste it? So you know that there's an audience for it. They will make more.
Now,
We just won't be reviewing them.
Yeah, no. Let's talk about Psyduck for a second, because
Psyduck.
I was convinced that was Ahmed Best, famous for Jar Jar Binks.
You know what's funny that you mentioned that, because I think he goes uncredited. So it could very well turn out to be like some stunt casting. You think he's had a little Jar Jar going on there?
So let me get this right. We're forced to listen to this spa music so your head doesn't explode and kill us all. Psyduck!
Maybe, but I was looking this up online, and there's no connection that I could find between him and this movie. But I did read that Ahmed Best went through a period of deep depression, and he was considering suicide.
Yeah, no, he showed up at this last Star Wars celebration and was just met with open arms, you know, because Jake Lloyd went through the same thing. Mm-hmm. Where these movies actually destroyed. This is where fandom sucks. Where, you know, now in this day and age where we can just voice our opinions, and you're telling some guy that he's the...
Yeah, it made me feel bad for everyone.
Right, no, right. The guy's doing a job. He's getting a paycheck. You know, he didn't write this script. He didn't create the character. Yeah. And yet all the hate piles on him. So I was glad to see that he was accepted, and people were very excited to see him back in the franchise.
Oh, that's good.
That would be very cool if that was him. So yeah, so Jim, buckets. Did you fall asleep with your head in one?
I was cradling one as I fell asleep. So you see, I didn't think it was terrible. I'm not offended by it. It just wasn't my cup of tea. So in that spirit, I would give it 2 buckets.
Okay. Oh, now what about Harrison?
It's difficult with him because he's too cool for school these days. You know, he doesn't want to own up to loving something.
Okay, gotcha.
Like, I thought it was cool. I thought it was good. Okay. You know, I'm like, well, if they came out with a part 2, would you want to see it? Yes, he said. You know, without hesitation.
But you know, only if you're going to talk about it, Dad.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this. I wish I had seen it with my kids, but the fact that they saw it the day before, we talked about it, and their enthusiasm was right up there with my crowd. I'm going to go 3.5. I thought it was, you know, and even with my limited knowledge of Pokemon, I thought it was fun. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
Well, there you go. I am not going to contest that whatsoever.
You know, Mike. Mike gives it 4 buckets for not seeing it.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't see it.
Yeah. No, you would have had it was the best Pokemon movie you've ever seen.
Yeah. I do hope they make a sequel.
I'm sure you do. So you can skip that one too.
The term Pokemon is used as a singular and as a plural at the same time, right? And it's almost like Podcoin. It reminds me, there's a parallel there. Pokemon, Podcoin.
Pocket Monsters. Well, they stand for Pocket Monsters. And, you know, in Podcoin, you can put change in your pockets.
Yes, you can. Podcoin, we have wholeheartedly embraced here at TMI. And once you hear this, we think that you'll agree with us that this is something that could be very lucrative for you, especially if you listen to a lot of podcasts. So take a listen to what we're talking about. Did you know that you can actually get paid just for listening to this podcast?
It's true.
Wait, is this the Podcoin app we were talking about last episode?
Yeah, it's a free app that actually pays you to listen to podcasts.
I've actually been using it for a while now. So when can I expect my big paycheck to roll in?
Slow down there, Colonel Steve Austin. You listen to podcasts and earn Podcoin points while you listen. Then you turn those points in for gift cards at places like Amazon or Starbucks.
Hi, Starbucks blonde vanilla bean cocoa milk latte.
Or there are multiple causes available to donate your points to. But since it's no secret that we here at TMI rely heavily on our local library systems to feed our classic movie feature, we thought it would be noble to get you, our listeners, to donate to the Books for Poor Kids charity.
All right. I like it. A podcast with a cause.
So rebellious.
Here's all you need to do. Step 1, download the Podcoin app right now on your phone.
I'm assuming it's available for iPhone and Android?
Yes. Step 2, use our code TMI, Nerd Kind. That's TMI, Nerd Kind, to get 300 Podcoin just for signing up. Step 3, subscribe and listen to TMI every Wednesday or any of your favorite podcasts. We don't mind, as long as you earn points. Don't forget to use our unique code, TMI, Nerd Kind. The more you listen, the more you earn.
Funny, I never thought of Jeff as a latte kind of guy.
Wah, wah, wah.
Yes, there's an air about hot coffee that's hard to resist. Full-bodied, refreshing hot coffee makes any time a pleasant interlude. Won't you have some now?
Where I figured we had to get a cup of coffee after Pokemon was talking about.
I'm sorry, I went right for a White Russian.
So speaking of White Russians, let's get into our classic feature.
And this was Mike's choice.
Mike's choice, who had never seen it before.
No, this was a call out. It had me. Thor had me thinking about it.
That's great, though.
I passed a bar in Iceland at one point called the Lebowski's.
Really?
Yeah, and where their specialty is White Russians, and I put the two together and said, "Let's review that."
Let's go.
Now, did it give you your Fat Thor fix?
It did. You totally get the connection.
Yeah, the Chris Hemsworth performance in Endgame is a tribute to Jeff Bridges here, I believe. Even down to the clothes, down to the dirty old sweater that he's got on.
Dude.
Now, Jeff, have you seen this theatrically?
I made mention last week that I've maybe seen it once or twice, but in watching it again, I realized I have seen it more than once because there were certain scenes that I knew dialogue from. There were other scenes I don't remember at all, but yes, I have seen this.
Now, this is the type of movie that just improves every time you see it. I think you appreciate it more.
That seems to be the rumor.
And that's why I think there's just such a cult that has grown up around this thing.
Which is crazy. This thing bombed when it first came out.
It did. And I remember seeing it in the theater when it had first come out. Fargo had come out before this. So that really...
Right, so this was like the Coen Brothers follow-up.
Yes.
And Fargo was so universally loved. Although when I saw Fargo, the people I went with actually got up and walked out of the theater. I have never seen a movie with those people again.
Did you stay or did you have to leave with them?
Oh, no, I stayed.
Okay.
I don't leave a theater. Sorry.
Unless it's Aquaman, then I leave.
Mike, you probably would have used your feet again during this Pokemon viewing, I'm sure. You didn't leave during Hellboy, though, did you?
I did not.
Were you tempted?
No, well, you know what? I thought I suggested it, so I should actually stick with it.
Okay.
You did not sit through the credits, though.
No, I did not.
Right.
No. So, yeah, I remember seeing Big Lebowski on the strength of Fargo, because loved Fargo, of course. Who didn't? Well, your friends, Jeff. And I remember it was an almost empty theater, except for one couple that had brought their 7 or 8-ish-year-old son with them. And they didn't leave. They sat and watched the whole thing. Now, I was doing some research into the Big Lebowski. More F-bombs are dropped in this movie than in Scarface. 292 total F-bombs. That's an average of 2 F-bombs per minute of watching.
Come on, man. There's got to be at least that many mans or dudes in there.
So there's this kid sitting behind us in this movie, and that's just overshadowing me.
You're actually cringing.
I'm uncomfortable every time there's an F-bomb dropped. This kid is sitting here hearing it. The parents don't seem to care. And there's that one scene where they go to Jackie Treehorn's porn party. And the naked girl, they're throwing her up in the air in slow motion, coming back down again. The kid was laughing uncontrollably during this scene.
Well, he's like, it's milk time. He's like, fuck.
And I'm just like, what is going on here? I'm like stepped into an alternate reality. So it just heightened the movie going experience for me. And I really liked it coming out of that theater. The like turned to love as I watched it in subsequent years. It's a noirish type heist movie at its heart, but it's really, the whole thing is the dude. It doesn't matter what the plot is. The movie
it's inconsequential, really.
The story, it doesn't matter as long as
because nothing really happens at the end of the day.
The movie depends on Jeff Bridges' reaction to the events going on around him, and that's what makes this movie is him.
It's his duditude.
I am not Mr. Lebowski. You're Mr. Lebowski. I'm the dude. So that's what you call me, you know? That or his dudeness or duder or, you know, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
Right?
Apparently, this is inspired by a real person by the name of Jeff Dowd, who is a movie producer that the Coens came across. And this guy actually had some stories that coincided with events in the movie. The whole thing where the dude gets his car stolen because this guy got his car stolen, found some kid's homework in the car, traced it back to the kid's house, and his friend went with him acting like a lawyer, just like
they do in the movie. That's pretty
just
funny.
like Walter does, yeah.
Just like John Goodman does, with evidence in Ziploc bags. That's what they did.
Yeah, I guess maybe I need to watch it a couple more times.
Well, you didn't like it as much?
I'm not saying I didn't like it. I find it weird that it's got this huge I mean, Mike just said that there's a bar named after it in Iceland. There's a festival, Lebowski Fest, and it's like in its 20th year. There's a religion around this. There's 450,000 Dudist priests. I had their first album, Dudist Priest.
That's more than there are Catholic priests.
Right? They all converted. They went over to Dudism. I'm going to say that I assume that watching this enhanced, if you know what I'm getting at, probably increases your enjoyment of this significantly.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm sure it does.
But since Mike has never seen it, I want to know what his take is.
You called it a heist movie, and I was thinking, it could be that, it could be mistaken identity, and it was just overwrought with complexity, so you have to throw yourself into the character. And that's kind of what I did, right? Because it's otherwise you're like, what in the hell is happening here?
Yeah, that's what the dude is experiencing, because he's thrust this very simple character with a very simple outlook on life is put in the middle of this complex plot that he's tasked with figuring out, and he can't do it. It's just like he can't keep up with what's going on screen.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm blathering about. I've got information, man. New shit has come to light. And shit, man.
I did read a review, and they said it's a quest to avenge a soiled rug is basically the heart of the movie. And that's what it is. That's his only motivation.
Because why? Because it ties the room together.
That rug really tied the room together. I mean, I get it. There's ridiculous quotables in his. And you said that the F-bomb is dropped, but he says man like every other word. Yeah, well, that's like your opinion, man. There's a scene early on where he goes into he just lives on these White Russians, and he writes a check for 69 cents.
It's happening.
But it was post-dated. If you go back and watch, when this movie was released, he had to post-date it. And there's some cool, dream sequences. There's that whole and the camera work where it's coming to the perspective of the bowling ball. There's fun stuff like that. Julianne Moore this is probably her craziest and nakedest thing I've ever seen.
Oh no, I don't think you've never seen Shortcuts.
Shortcuts.
I think it's in her contract to appear naked. I think, or at least it was in the 90s. Yeah.
Or it's a given. She'll turn up and she'll be naked.
And it's funny too because the guy who actually plays the Big Lebowski, it's not the name of the movie is not Jeff Bridges' character. It's the other Lebowski that he gets confused with. And I said that guy just looks familiar, and his name is David Huddleston. So the only thing I came away with is that he played the grandfather on Wonder Years, and I'm like, that's not where I probably would have remembered him. But he plays Olsen Johnson in Blazing Saddles.
Oh, okay.
One of the Johnsons with the orange roofs, But otherwise, Philip Seymour Hoffman was this
and his character seems to be a dead ringer for Lebowski, almost so that you think, is that Philip Seymour Hoffman in makeup when you see the Lebowski in the wheelchair? And he is just his maniacal laughter, especially when the character of Bunny offers to perform a service for Lebowski.
Yes.
And the embarrassed laughter that erupts out of Philip Seymour Hoffman. He has to deal with this woman on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Oh, isn't that sweet?
Yeah, exactly. He's like, she's crazy. Come on, move on. Dan Goodman kills it in this movie.
John Goodman.
I'm sorry. Oh, I wrote Dan Goodman. Yeah, because he plays Dan Connor on.
He is. His character's based on John Milius, who directed Conan the Barbarian. And if you listen to the director's commentary of Conan the Barbarian, you completely get the correlation between...
Really?
the character of Walter, and John Milius, the director.
Well, I will tell you that Walter hit a little too close to home because he reminded me way too much of my brother. That was the way my brother was and the way he acted. I will say that Buscemi was completely wasted in this role.
Yeah.
He didn't do anything.
An early role, I might add, for Buscemi. I think.
But he was still coming off Fargo.
Yeah.
And it was just like he had nothing to do. He was just a punching bag for Walter. and then to just have a heart attack at the end. I don't think he had more than 2 lines of dialogue.
But it was a nice scene at the end when they cremated him and it all blew back in.
Yeah, blew back in her face. There is a lot of funny stuff that goes on here.
And a lot
John
of subtle
Turturro,
stuff.
That's what I understand. My understanding is that every time you see it, you pick up on something else, another nuanced line of dialogue or something that
just something as small as when Walter and the dude go back to get their car, actually to give that kid his homework, saying, "We know that you're the one that took the car. Where's our briefcase?" Then Walter going outside, smashing up the brand new sports car.
Right, only to find out that
it's the neighbor's car.
Right.
And the neighbor comes out and destroys the dude's car. They're driving back, and you see no windshield and just the wind blowing the dude's hair as they're driving, and it's silence, but it's so funny at the same time.
Yeah, because Walter's just completely, it doesn't matter. Like Walter just lives in his own world.
Like this doesn't affect him. It's the dude's life that he's screwing up, and every time he screws up one of these things, he just wants to go bowling. The drop off is a classic example.
But that's funny because you never see the dude bowling.
No, you don't.
Right?
No, you don't. That's right.
I think maybe he's helping in that one dream sequence. Julianne Moore's character, he's helping her, but yeah, you never actually see him bowl.
No. And I love the one thing that's always stuck with me is when they find the dude's car and he goes to the lot to get it back, and he's talking to the police officer, and he asks the police officer, "So man, you got any leads?" And the guy just erupts.
Leads, right? Yeah.
No, we're working double shifts and all of this.
Yeah. It always makes me think, geez, I wish I never get my car stolen because nobody's ever going to find out who did it. Yeah.
And we didn't talk about Sam Elliott, man. I'm telling you right now, that mustache needs its own screen credit.
Yeah.
I just got lost in that every time he was on. I'm like, that is the most luscious mustache I've ever witnessed in my life.
We should really watch Roadhouse. If you guys have never seen Roadhouse.
That's one of my brother-in-law's favorite movies.
Of course it is.
So just talking about Sam Elliott, that's where he really shines.
But he's got that voice,
Yes, he does.
And he just kind of rambles into the beginning of the movie, and he comes out at the end.
Yeah, he was brought into it just to be the audience's
narrator.
Point of view.
Yeah.
So he's kind of looking at all this from afar.
Yeah, and basically, everything you've seen makes no sense.
It is.
Jesus, the character of Jesus, again, a throwaway character, but John Turturro just makes it his own.
And he only has maybe a minute total of screen.
I was gonna say, he really just kind of like.
But he's
there's a joke where he says Jesus, and then it cuts to him with his name Jesus on it. He's like, yes, and he's got the. Yeah. But I guess he came up with all the little dance things.
Then, of course, you hear Hotel California in Spanish in the background. Yeah. Classic movie. Did not do well. It did not do well when it was released. I
think a lot of cult movies are like that, though, where they just kind of take on a life of their own. I mean, this probably on video and HBO and all this other stuff. But to me, from what I understand, it almost borders on like Rocky Horror level, like multi-viewing, mass audience, late night camaraderie watching this and
shouting out dialogue.
Probably.
One of my favorite scenes in here is when, towards the end, when the dude and Walter go to visit the Big Lebowski at his mansion, once they've kind of figured everything out, that Bunny didn't even kidnap herself. She just left town for a couple of days.
Right, yeah.
Her nihilist friends took advantage of the situation, going as far as one of them, Amy Mann from Till Tuesday, I may add.
But I did not realize that's who that was.
Cutting off her own toe to make,
which was very Tarantino. I got the very Quentin Tarantino, the whole zoom in on her foot, and you see it in bandages.
And Walter he knew what was going on from the beginning.
Well, that's not her toe.
That wasn't her toe, dude.
Whose toe was it, Walter?
I do know that nothing about it indicates
Yeah,
that it
the
was
nail polish, Walter.
Fine, dude. As if it's impossible to get some nail polish, apply it to someone else's toe.
Someone else?
You want a toe? I can get you a toe. There are ways, dude. You don't want to know about it, believe me.
Yeah, but Walter.
Hell, I can get you a toe by 3 o'clock this afternoon with nail polish.
But when they go to Lebowski's house and they're confronting him.
Out of this house now, you bums! Let me tell you something else. I've seen a lot of spinals, dude, and this guy's a fake.
Stay away from me, mister!
This guy walks. I've never been more certain of anything in my life.
Get away from me!
Put him down, man!
Yeah, I'll put him down, dude.
I'm
through, baby.
Come on, man, help me put him back in his chair.
Right, he picks him up and throws him. And he just lays on the ground.
He's moaning on the ground.
See, now I almost feel like I have to go back and rewatch this.
I think they should make a T-shirt with "This guy walks" like on the. So,
I'm sure. You name it, it's out there.
So yeah, it was made for $15 million. It made 62, so it did make back its budget, but it didn't do Fargo numbers, so it was seen as a disappointment at the time. Charlize Theron tried out for the part of Bunny, which was given to Tara Reid, who later went on to fame from.
What was she in?
American Pie.
No, American Pie, but
yes.
The other one was in American Beauty. Not Tara Reid, but I don't remember the other girl's name. Wow.
You can edit that in later.
So yeah, I loved watching this again. If we're talking buckets, if we're ready to give it buckets at this point, I would go 4.5. I would just shy of 5 buckets. It just puts a smile on my face every time I watch this.
Fair, that's fair.
I'd go. You know what? It's a movie that would do with a rewatch. And with Jeff on this one, I'd probably go like 3.5, and I think that I would like it more the more times I watched it.
Maybe we should review this once a year or every 6 months, and then every year our buckets will keep going up. I'm going to go 3.5 as well. I did enjoy it. Again, it probably requires multiple viewings for me to.
I do remember at the bar in Iceland, the Lebowski bar, that they actually had a green toe was one of the drinks.
Oh, was it floating in your? Oh yeah.
And let me also a little fun fact: the coffee house where the Walter and the dude are talking about said toe, that is a real location in Los Angeles. It's not a real coffee house. It's a vacant building that they only use for movie diner sets.
Oh.
So it just sits there vacant until
somebody else films a movie that needs a diner set. It's
pretty bizarre.
Countless movies that I was just
gonna say, what is some of the other movies that have filmed?
Some of the other movies, well, Gone in 60 Seconds is the one that sticks out for some reason. American History X was another one. It just looks like and even the angle that they shoot Walter and the dude at, it just looks very familiar, and that's probably why I've seen the same shot in the same building from other movies.
Yeah, it seems familiar.
So those are the only two I can remember offhand, but there was a very long list of other films that were filmed in that location. So I just thought that was cool. So there we go. So that actually leads us to our confessional this week.
Confessionals.
Because the Coen brothers have had so many great movies and some that you forget about, because this confessional made me really reassess what they've done.
Yeah.
And you kind of forget some of these movies. There's so many of them that are out there.
And I will say they're very much an acquired taste. You either get them or you don't. Like I said, Fargo had its audience. This one didn't really, but there's some other ones out there.
So the question is, what is your favorite Coen Brothers movie? And I'm going to go first because it's so obvious. It is The Big Lebowski for me. Is far and away my favorite Coen Brothers movie.
I think this is an acquired taste, these Coen brothers. I mean, I had to think about it, and I was like, and then I had to look it up, and I'm like, I'll go with Bridge of Spies.
Oh,
and I'm not, and it doesn't even sort of fit the Coen brothers, which means the one that I'd like the most is probably the least
Coen-ish.
Right?
Is that a Coen brothers? I wasn't even
Joel Coen. I think
putting that on my radar. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because that's really heavy.
Yeah, it was written by Joel Coen.
Okay.
Right. So you're right. So I have not selected. I don't have.
No, that would count.
I would think so, because they wrote a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Between Joel and Ethan.
Now, was that directed by Spielberg? Am I mistaken?
It was Spielberg. Okay. That's the Tom Hanks.
That is.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Return Gary Powers movie.
There you go. I didn't even have to think about this. Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou?
That is a good one as well.
My absolute favorite. As a kid growing up, I mean, in high school, we were forced to read the Iliad and the Odyssey. And of course, in high school, my shortcomings as a student, I overcame by just drawing pictures of everything for my projects. In the Odyssey, I was obsessed with all the creatures that Ulysses was encountering. And this is based on Homer's Odyssey. If you go back through and you watch this movie, they encounter all these different creatures, whether the sirens or the Cyclops, which is played by Dan Goodman.
John Goodman. With an eye patch.
With an eye patch. But it's just, to me, and my wife actually said this one day, she goes, this is my favorite George Clooney movie because he's actually acting. And it made me think, really, this is the only movie I can think of where he's not just playing George Clooney. He's actually a character. And the soundtrack is phenomenal. The Soggy Bottom Boys, I love it. That's my favorite.
Yeah, Turturro in this one is also great. He's like a secret weapon in all these Coen brother movies.
Right. Yeah, turns into a frog.
Good choice.
Yes. He's a bona fide.
Now, next week, we are going back to Netflix. And we're going to be watching the breakout box office success, the greatest moneymaker that China has ever seen, apparently, in terms of homegrown movies. Don't know if it did better than Endgame in China, but it did $700 million in its own right, and it's just appeared on Netflix.
Yep.
And it's a movie called Wandering Earth.
Which I've been waiting for. I read a couple months ago that Netflix had acquired it. But it just like magically showed up. No fanfare. No, I mean, this is, for all intents and purposes, the biggest movie to come out of China in a very, very long time. And it was
And I've watched it as well.
I have watched it.
I see. I have not watched it as of yet. But we are waiting with pins and needles because Jeff is about to reveal what our classic feature is going to be along with Wandering Earth next week.
No.
All right. Well, Mike can attest to that Wandering Earth takes itself very seriously.
Yes.
It's a serious movie, and I think we need to just kind of cleanse our palate afterwards. So I'm going back to 1968, and we're going to watch Barbarella. Another sci-fi romp, outer space adventure, one that is a cult classic as well.
Yeah, romp is really the right term.
And it is available in my library.
Yeah, I'm checking now.
Yeah, I had multiple copies at my library.
Maybe the most well-known fun fact about Barbarella, the name of Duran Duran was acquired from this movie.
Correct.
It's one of the characters.
The band's so nice, they named it twice.
Yeah, so there you go.
So there you go. That's your homework for next week, Jim.
That should be good, right? I don't know how I'm going to check this out without seeming like a little creepy.
Maybe they hand it to you in a brown paper bag.
Yeah, get some other things along with it.
There you go.
Put it in, slide it in the middle.
Pick up some like Pokemon cartoons.
Yeah.
Maybe some PBS documentaries or something like that.
Or just straight up ask them if they got a porn section.
Yeah, it just looks
just go in hardcore, Mike.
No, my library's, I'm checking, my library's too highbrow for this movie.
Uh-oh. It is available on, where did I stumble across? I know on demand. It was like a $3.99 rental.
Happy to pay.
All right.
There you go.
So watch it along with us out there. Go to your local library and check it out yourself.
There you go.
Then you can be prepared for our episode next week.
I don't think anything can prepare you for Barbarella.
Now, in case you're thinking that we're ignoring Game of Thrones, we are not. But just keep in mind that we record this show on a Sunday. And when you listen to our Wandering Earth Barbarella episode, that will have been recorded on the Sunday that the final Game of Thrones episode will air. So worry not. We will be covering Game of Thrones in its entirety the following week. So
are we hitting the penultimate episode tonight?
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are. As we record this, the second to last episode will be airing this evening.
And if anybody doesn't realize that Jim binged all 7 seasons leading into this, and I give you kudos that you did that.
Yes, just 2 months ago, I was a Game of Thrones novice, and now I am a Game of Thrones expert.
So you'll probably be throwing out names. I'll be like, who?
Yeah.
Because it's a lot to take in, and sometimes I forget. When they were showing, HBO was showing like one season a day, and I saw some of the earlier episodes, and I'm like, I don't remember this.
Yeah, no memory of it, yeah.
No. There you go. Something to look forward to.
All right, Pika Pika, gentlemen.
Oh, there's a snake in my boot.